For a lot of people, the most wonderful time of the year is Christmas time, and I typically agree with them, but Ravens week is pretty darn close. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Southside DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and Steelers DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers YouTube channel. My name is Chris Halicke. Joining me, Matt Williamson. Matt, what is going on, my friend?
Not a lot. Like you said, it's Ravens week. It's been busy. We got a condensed week after this. Got to go to Cleveland, so that makes all of our lives a little more difficult. But the issue at hand, Baltimore Birdies. They're a really good football team. I think their offense is the best unit in football, and it's terrifying. But it's not your older brother's Ravens either. I mean, they got some issues too.
Yes, they do. And no Greg McAfee today. He is covering Pitt basketball tonight. We're recording this Friday night. So, obviously he is preoccupied with some good old college hoops. And so, before we get into Ravens week, as much as I want to talk about that, I think we'd be remiss to not talk about last week's win over the Commanders, 28-27 down in Landover, Maryland. Heck of a game for the Steelers, I thought. It wasn't the cleanest game whatsoever. I had no issues with the fake punt. When they leave a gunner wide open like that, you better put it on tape that you're willing to take advantage of that. Otherwise, teams are going to try to take advantage of you. And so I had no issues with that, and nobody would have had issues with it if James Pierre just catches a football. So, and I obviously want to get your thoughts on the game. I thought it was a good game overall. Obviously, they were able to climb out of a 10-point deficit. Defense definitely took their medicine in the middle of the game with that 95-yard drive, and then allowing them to double dip and then score a touchdown right off the bat in the second half. But they were able to come away with a big time win thanks to Mike Williams' touchdown at the near the end of the game, and then a big fourth down stop too.
Yeah, and real quick on the fake punt. I mean, I think there's an option that Tomlin called fake punt. Like, they didn't leave the sideline going, we are definitely going to fake this thing. I mean, it's just kind of almost an automatic, in my opinion. And I guess Washington put this on tape too, so they probably stressed it in the walkthrough more than usual. Hey, if you get this from Washington, you're throwing it. And frankly, most high schoolers should have caught that pass. I mean, it didn't go that way. I mean, I know it's why you have a safety throw into a corner. You have two athletes out there playing catch. It's really what you're doing. They should catch the ball,
And there was nothing wrong with the throw. It was actually a pretty decent throw by Miles Kilbrew.
And I've seen in practices he can throw okay. I don't know. Maybe he was a high school quarterback or junior high quarterback. Whatever. He's fine. But yes, there were two Washington drives back-to-back going in and out of the half that weren't great at all. Frankly, I thought the Steelers' cornerbacks had a really bad day, and the All-22 really showed that more than the TV copy, that there were a lot of plays on tape that could have been made that this game probably goes differently. Cam Sutton in particular, I thought, was flat out terrible.
He was bad.
Yeah, and the D-line made up for it, though. They kept Daniels in a compromised position, didn't allow him to improv, so that was great. I don't want to say the offense took a step back, but Wilson wasn't as great. I mean, the running game was fine, but it just shows that if that's your low water mark, you're in pretty good shape.
The biggest concern to me wasn't Russ. It wasn't his cleanest performance.
Right.
I mean, obviously 50% completion percentage. That's not all him. The one thing that and some people don't like this type of offense, in which it feels like when the short and intermediate stuff isn't working, that it just feels like you're living and dying by the long ball. And it did feel like that at times. However, Russ is throwing so good of a deep ball right now that it should be able to be caught by multiple guys. And the one thing that I noticed, it happened with Van Jefferson once, it happened with Calvin Austin once, it might even happen with Van twice, was on those goal balls. And I broke this down on film, and then Mike Williams actually kind of confirmed it without actually naming anybody. But he confirmed it for me that like Van and Calvin were so late getting their heads around that by the time that they needed to adjust to the ball, or that they decided they needed to adjust to the ball, because they were taking away the inside. They weren't letting Russ lead them down the field. So Russ was throwing to the outside portion, that whole focus on the red line and everything like that. That's why that red line is there, so that if the quarterback needs it, he has that outside shoulder to throw to. And that's where he was throwing. And they just weren't able to adjust, because the way Mike Williams put it to me was they would look back at Russ and then look up. And by the time they looked up, saw the ball, it's too late to adjust. And so when he said he went out there and he had that opportunity, he's like, I knew I had to look to the sky right away. And that's what he did. He tracked the ball very well. Yeah. So that was something that was really interesting to me, because it was something I noticed like watching the game live. And the press box in Washington is right in the caddy corner of the end zone. So we get almost that end zone angle of everything. And I noticed with Van and Calvin both, I was like, dude, they're getting their hand around so late on those go balls. And I don't mean to be like, that's the reason why the offense didn't get going. The biggest concern to me was actually the offensive line not getting enough push in the running game. Especially early on, they weren't able to establish the run. They should have ran much, but we talked about this last week. Like, they should have ran way better against this defense than they did. And they didn't. And that's concerning going into a game in which now they're facing the best run defense in the league. And so that was concerning to me. But I thought for Russ, the biggest stat to me when it comes to Russ, and this is why I'm not concerned at all, he has a perfect passer rating in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That's crazy.
And so, like, and not only perfect passer rating, but his yards per attempt in the fourth quarter is like in the double digits. Like, I don't remember the exact number. I put it in my Friday Insider on DKPittsburghSports.com, but it's like 12 or something along those lines. Like, he is throwing the ball downfield, and he is completing like well more than 70% of his passes. It's ridiculous what he's doing in the fourth quarter right now. And, you know, we can get into this here in just a second when we break down the Ravens, but, you know, the fact that this team is able to continue to make adjustments on the fly, that they're able to put up points in the second half, that to me is the most encouraging thing. You'd like to see them get off to better starts, but when you face good teams, sometimes they're just going to get the better of you. But to me, it is about the team that is able to make adjustments and then capitalize on it.
Yeah, and the only thing I really want to add to it is you mentioned the numbers of Russ in the fourth quarter. This has really been something all year long. You know, I mean, they're the best point differential in the second half team, and they have been for the majority of the year. You know, I mean, they haven't played a murderer's row as teams, but it shows that they're adjusting at halftime. They're in shape. They're tough. You know, they don't fall apart in the fourth quarter, and there's a lot to be said for that. It's coaching.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break. I mean, it was a pretty good win, obviously, for the Steelers. Big time win for them, really, to improve to 7-2, puts them in position for this Sunday, which it's Ravens week. It's already an exciting week, but now first place in the AFC North is on the line. So when we come back after this break, we are going to dive into this. We're going to dive into as much of this as we possibly can in about a 20-minute span to try to get you guys ready. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
So it is Ravens week. These are probably the games I look forward to the most every year when it comes to Steelers, their schedule. It is almost throw the records out the window. These games are typically so close. I think it's 8 straight games that have been decided by one score, and then 5 of those games are 4 points or less. Like, they just
always the same. I mean, yeah. It doesn't matter what the records are and all that stuff, you know. It
almost doesn't matter because, like, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, this team had a bye beforehand, or they had a mini bye, like the Ravens did. They played, Thursday night, so they had some extra time to rest up and everything. But I almost feel like that stuff doesn't matter. It's just this matchup. Now, still, we do need to get into the actual matchups because there is a new addition to that Ravens offense that the Steelers have not seen before, and that is Derrick Henry. We will get into Lamar Jackson very, very soon because we cannot talk about the Ravens and not talk about Lamar Jackson. But I do want to start off with Derrick Henry. What he's done, he's the NFL's leading rusher by a wide margin. He's already over 1,100 yards on the season. He is seeing a resurgence that he wasn't able to do over the past couple of years in Tennessee because they just turned into a really bad football team. What is this addition done for this particular offense? Because now it just seems like it's put them over the top and they're unstoppable.
Yeah, and first off, I think it's super cool that, of course, all the rookies are new to this. You know, I mean, that happens every year. But now we have two probable Hall of Famers, Russell Wilson go around, some new coaches, Queen and Elliott, switch sides, so there is some definite coolness about all of that. I don't have the exact number, but running backs in a Lamar Jackson offense average around 6 yards carry. I mean, that's Dobbins, that's Gus Edwards, that's Justice Hill. And Dobbins is fine, but he's been hurt a ton. Those other guys are just guys, And if you throw this in that equation, it just takes everything up such a notch. You know what I mean? And I do think Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, really has a good feel for what's going on. Everything's clicking in this offense, and they throw so much at you with Ricard and tight ends, and maybe we'll even see more 11 with Deontay there now. I mean, there's some reason they got him. Who knows? And frankly, I think Lamar's playing better than he ever has, and he was the MVP last year. So it's just something I think we'll remember in history that I'm 51 years old. I can't remember a more unique quarterback than Lamar Jackson. I can't remember a more unique running back than Derrick Henry, and they're together,
I do think let's get into Lamar Jackson talk because as dangerous as Derrick Henry is, and I do think he is going to play a factor in this game. Lamar Jackson, Steelers fans just automatically assume that because the Steelers have had success against him in the past, that they could just
played him 4 times.
Yeah, well, no, they played. I think he's got like a 2-4 record, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was Steelers. 1-3. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
But either way, he hasn't even last year. Yeah, well, even last year. So let's go back to last year. The most recent performance. He only played one time because when they played in that monsoon in Baltimore, the Ravens had already wrapped up everything they possibly could, so there was no reason to play Lamar. They played in Pittsburgh. The Steelers won, but man alive, those Ravens receivers dropped like 8 million passes, and a couple of them were in the end zone. Like these are literally taking points off the board.
And it wasn't because you were so great on defense,
Right. And
you got to bounce,
If you go back and try to watch that without your Steelers goggles on and just watch the way Lamar played, don't look at the overall result. Don't look at the end game or of the 17-10 final score. Look at the way Lamar played. Now, was it perfect? No. And he made some critical mistakes. That interception to Joey Porter Jr. was a very critical mistake. And it was, if you watch the way Lamar Jackson plays the rest of the time, especially against the NFC, you don't see him making those throws. So he does, there might be something about playing the Steelers in which he just is due for maybe 2 or 3 just absolutely boneheaded plays every time they play. And that throw that in the end zone that Porter picked off was one of them. There was no chance that was going to be caught and Porter picked it off. However, Lamar Jackson, I have I have the
or maybe
highest,
those are long gone, right?
Yeah, I have the highest respect for Lamar. I really do. I think, and he's the guy who I didn't think he was going to turn into this type of a quarterback, this type of a passer. He's already so dangerous with his legs, but he does so much from the pocket as a passer. I think he's with the way Patrick Mahomes is playing this year in a vacuum, in a 2024 vacuum, Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And
I think it's him and Allen, to be honest with you. I think there's
Josh Allen's up there too.
I mean, Burrow, Mahomes, and those two are the elite quarterbacks, in my opinion. Lamar's probably number one.
Yeah.
In
And
terms of the way you described it. Yep.
Yeah, and knowing and seeing, like, even though the Steelers have been saying all week, we're not going to defend Lamar the same way we defended Jaden Daniels. Okay, that's great. But you're gonna kind of have to play him the same way. You're gonna have to. It was the same bones. It was make sure that Lamar can't get outside. It was essentially try to bring 5 guys in a straight line at him so that he can't. You push up against him so he can't escape up the middle, and he also can't escape to the outside. And then you have to play man coverage behind it because Lamar will just eat up zone coverage. And the problem that I have, and the problem that I have with this game in general is the Steelers, to your point in the first segment, was the corners did not look good in man coverage last week.
Man was a problem, including Jackson.
Yes. And that Dante Jackson's never, like, his game is built more on playing off the ball, playing more zone than man. Yeah. It's not playing press man. And if he's going to have a game in which he's asked to play a lot of press man, it could be a long day because all Lamar needs is 2.5 seconds to find that open guy. And if it's man coverage and the dude's open, you're talking about a lot of room to run.
I think that's one reason. I don't know if we'll see him or not, but that's one reason they grabbed Deontay, because he's a man beater. You know what I mean? And I was asked a bunch after that Commanders game. So does this really prepare them for Lamar the next week? And I'm like, no, it's the other way around. Playing Lamar prepared them to play the Daniels role. Next week against Baltimore is a totally different beast, because he's been around the block. He's seen it more and more. He's not a rookie. His weapons are better. His, as you mentioned, from the pocket is outstanding. I mean, anyone, if you have the blackest and goldest colored glasses going on, if you watch him, you will not tell me he's a poor passer or a below average passer. Maybe you thought he was at one point. And I remember I did a long article in the offseason after his rookie year, second year, and even came to the conclusion then that when he missed, it was uglier than Joe Average miss. Like, wow, where'd that one come from? Anthony Richardson-esque, like, how did that come out of his hand? But, I mean, he played a pro-style offense at Louisville. I mean, like, he's always been a good passer. People never want to give him that credit.
Yeah, and I understand he was here's the thing that I think the main point that I want to make about Lamar Jackson is here, those watching the show live, we have one person saying Lamar Jackson versus the Steelers, 4 touchdowns versus 7 picks. Again,
I get it. Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that the way the Steelers have played against him in the past, the results speak for themselves. Like, you can't argue. Like, yes, I can bring up the fact that the Ravens receivers dropped every pass in sight last year. Well, the fact of the matter is that the Ravens still only scored 10 points and the Steelers won 17-10. Like, that's the end game. And the end game is to win. I also think that if the Steelers win this game, it won't be because Lamar made a lot of mistakes. Or it was because they were able to at least limit Lamar's impact on the game, so he didn't have that Lamar Jackson type game, and try to keep them out of the end zone. Let them rack up 450 yards of offense, but keep them at 20 points, something along those lines. It's not going to be a situation. I would be shocked if they hold them to 10 points again, just because this offense is in a completely different stratosphere right now than we've seen in recent years. It is the number 1 offense in the league, and it's the number 1 offense by a wide margin. I don't know if you have the numbers pulled up right away, because and here in a second we'll get to the other side of the ball for them, but this is the number 1 offense, and they have, like you said, they have weapons galore everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers, just to put it in perspective, is he right now is on pace to have the best passer rating ever. You know what I mean? I mean, I think the best way to even judge an offense is just yards per play. Well, the Packers are at 6.1 yards per play. That's really, really good.
Yep.
That's 3rd best in the league. The Niners are at 6.5. That's unbelievable. I mean, if you're over 6, that's crazy. There's only 3 teams over 6. They're at 6.5. Baltimore's at 7.1.
Yeah.
they're a yard better than the number 3 team. I mean, that's where they're at right now. You know, I mean, it's outlandish. I do think they will. Lastly, I think we'll see some of that Washington carryover where they're going to try to keep him in the pocket. They're definitely going to hit him every chance they get.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think I'm open to the idea, and this is something that's hard for an analyst to comment on, that I'm not saying Tomlin is Harbaugh's number, but maybe Harbaugh gets a little squirrelish Steeler week and it reflects into his quarterback. And, you know, the Steelers have had their number lately, you know, so maybe there's something to that they outthink it, or it's a big brother, little brother situation. But he might be the best football player on the planet right now.
Agreed. And that's why I said if the Steelers, I definitely think the Steelers can win this game. I know the way I've talked up Lamar and this offense, like people are like, oh, well, you don't think the Steelers. No, I absolutely think the Steelers can win it. And you know, we'll get into
wait till we get the other side of the ball. There's some things. This side of the ball, though, there's just no chinks.
Right. And so let's go ahead and jump to that defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Before we do, I want to throw one thing out there that greatly favors the Steelers, because I just want to make sure that it gets said. If in fact this is a 3-point game or a close game, as they always are, the Steelers have distinct advantages: penalties, turnovers, special teams, including kicker. Justin Tucker's a shell of what he used to be, and Boz might be the best on the planet. And that's all the hidden yardage stuff. I mean, if that holds up, that doesn't mean that 60 minutes that they play at Acrisure, the Steelers are definitely going to be the better penalty, special team, turnover team. But history shows going in, they're much better at all 3 of those phases.
Yeah, and the Ravens are the most penalized team in the league. And that is something to take into account. And you talk about hidden yardage. And that's why I said, like, the Lamar can play a great game, as he did last year. And the Ravens can still lose. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can lose a football game while your quarterback plays a great game. Defensive side of the ball, the Ravens total defense. We'll get into the secondary here in a second, but this just goes to show how much the secondary plays into it, because you're going to hear Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith talk about how the numbers are skewed, that because the offense gets out to big leads, that they can't run the ball. So that's why they're number 1 against the run, because teams aren't running on them, and that they're last in pass defense because teams are having to do nothing but throw. First off, they're giving up almost 300 yards a game through the air. But total defense, EPA per play, this is not like the total EPA that is an accumulative stat. EPA per play, total defense, they are 27th.
That's why I said you're not your big brothers Ravens. It's not Ray Lewis and Suggs and, you know, fundamentally sound and all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm big on explosive plays are huge in the NFL right now. Shouldn't shock a soul that Baltimore's offense is number 1 in explosive play rate. Of course, they're awesome. Their defense is 32nd, even though their run defense is 3rd best. So there's such a distant 32nd in explosive pass play rate, it drags them all the way down to 32.
Yeah, it's bad. Like the back, their defensive front is still very, very good.
Yeah,
and
Hamilton's going to play, it looks like.
Yes.
And, you know, so they have some players.
The one thing that I'm concerned, I think it's really ironic. Now, I've only watched a little bit of film when it comes to the Ravens. Obviously, I haven't gone through all of their games. But the one thing I've noticed is that Roquan Smith has been, and like Trenton Simpson, like those guys have been pretty good against the run. That's one of the reasons why they're a good run defense. They've not been good in pass coverage.
That's what shocks me is Roquan.
Yes. And that's ironic to me, because the whole narrative in the offseason was that, well, Patrick Queen needs Roquan next to him. Well, Patrick Queen's been pretty good in coverage.
And keep getting better.
Yeah, while Roquan's not been very good at all. And I think one of the reasons why you're seeing the Ravens get carved up is because their linebackers have been so bad in coverage that their safeties are having to overcompensate for it. And that then leaves them susceptible to the real deep stuff. And their corners right now, not taking anything away against Marlon Humphrey, who I still think is a very good player. They're just knowing the way Russell Wilson could throw the deep ball. And now that Mike Williams is going to probably get a little bit of a larger workload, I'm expecting at least 3 or 4 big time go ball completions in this game from the Steelers offense, just because the Ravens are susceptible to giving them up. And yeah, the Ravens defense is very, very vulnerable to big plays, especially through the air.
Yeah. And a couple players, Marcus Williams is their deep middle guy. He's had a really good career. He might be shot. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Brandon Stevens has taken massive steps backwards. Wiggins doesn't look like he's quite ready.
Yeah.
So there are some personnel issues. I mean, Hamilton's awesome, but he can only do one. He's. I don't know how compromised he'll be. That was a bad looking ankle injury, and I'm with you that Humphrey's still maybe 90% of his best day. You know what I mean? He's still a pretty good player, and he can do a lot of good things for you. You know what I mean? He's a quality player. But I also think another thing that's plagued them greatly is communication. A lot of blown assignments, getting plays in late, a lot of frantic behavior, like at the snap, who do I got, that type of thing. And if you look back at the offseason, their defensive coordinator became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yep.
Another assistant became the defensive coordinator of Tennessee, and the other assistant became the defensive coordinator at Miami. So they took like your 3 best guys.
Yeah. Yeah. You are going to see a change in identity there. You can have a lot of the same person. Shoot, man. Like one of the great examples of that to look elsewhere is look at the Chargers defense.
Right.
A lot of the same players, and all of a sudden they're the number 1 defense in the league.
Yeah.
And I mean, all it took was a change at head coach and defensive coordinator with the same players, and all of a sudden they go from to wow. That's now granted. I think the Chargers have had a little bit of a lighter schedule so far. They've had some good.
It's been about the lightest, but still, the
right.
Steelers that put the most points up on them. I don't think they've allowed more than 20 points in a game.
And they could have put up 27 if they didn't just kneel it down inside the 5.
True.
So, like, it could have been even more. And that just goes to show, like, maybe the Steelers' offense is actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. By the way, in case anybody doesn't know, Steelers' offense goes into the week ranked 12th in scoring.
Yeah, and ascending. Obviously,
yes.
There's momentum here, too. I mean, it's one of the better offenses in the league. It's an upper half offense, which we all would have taken on opening day.
100%.
And I think they're well equipped to attack on field, of course. And I can't stress this enough. I mean, Jamar Chase, what he did to these guys on Thursday and the time before that, I mean, it's the most production any wide receiver has had against a specific team in the season. And if you watch Thursday game, which I'm sure a lot of people did, it was a standalone game. The only guy you can't let be is Jamar Chase. I mean, like, they have one good dude. There's no Higgins. There's no, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying Pickens is at Chase's level yet, but he could go bonkers.
Yeah, it's a good week to have George Pickens in fantasy football. I'll put it that way. And I have both Russell in our league that we play in. I have both Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, and I'm starting Russell Wilson. I'm gonna bet that Russ puts up at least 250 yards in the air. Probably throws for multiple touchdowns. That's just knowing what this Ravens defense is. This Ravens defense made Jameis Winston look like a legitimate NFL quarterback and lost to the Browns.
Yeah. I mean, they lost to the Raiders too. Now, I don't think it's going to look like Neil O'Donnell 4 wide in the Super Bowl. And I mean, they're still going to run the ball. There's still a Steeler identity.
Yep.
You're going to see Darnell Washington out there. There's going to be big bodies, but they're going to take more shots than ever. And I definitely think the pass percentage will be higher than it has been.
Yes, I think this is going to be one of the rare Steelers-Ravens games in which you're probably going to see both teams exceed 20 points, which I don't even know the last time that happened. There have been those weird games in the past. I mean, obviously, I think it was the Christmas Day game. That might have been one of the games where both teams put up a lot of points. They've definitely happened over the course of this rivalry and even in recent years. But like last year, both games ended with a 17-10 score. That typically is the way these go. I don't see that going this way. I do see both offenses putting up a lot of points. The question at that point is which team shoots themselves in the foot more often, either with dropped passes or penalties or whatever else.
And to reiterate that, I mean, Ravens games average 57 points and 808 yards per game. They're both league highs by massive amounts, and every game but one has gone over in Vegas. I mean, so I don't think this is going to be drastically different, which means it'll be 9-6, and because it's Steelers Ravens. Who knows?
It very well could be. Well, let's go ahead and get into our predictions real quick. We're running out of time. Matt, I'll kick it to you first for your prediction, and then I got to be completely honest. Even as we're starting this, I'm still on the fence. So I literally can be making it on the fly.
I know, and I like the Steelers +3, but that's not what we're doing here. My official prediction is Ravens 26, Steelers 24. I don't feel good about it at all. And because of those hidden yardage things in particular, Tomlin versus Harbaugh, Steelers' familiarity with Lamar, there's a lot of things that favor the Steelers, and most of all, Baltimore's pass defense and the way Wilson's throwing, deep balls and things. I think Baltimore's offense is awesome.
Yeah. I agree with that. There's one thing I want to say. I keep wanting to go with the Ravens winning. That feels right to me, but I think I would feel the same way even when they play in Baltimore later this year. But I
don't care where it's at,
But I don't feel like the Steelers are going to get swept in the series. And that game later, it almost doesn't. It's not even the fact that it's in Baltimore. It's that game is sandwiched in between at Philly and home against the Chiefs on Christmas.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's a rough stretch. I feel like this is the more winnable game between the two for the Steelers. And I keep coming back to what the Steelers are doing in the second half. And maybe you can pull this number up for me as I'm saying it, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But the Ravens in the second half, their defense in the second half has been atrocious. They have been bad in the second half.
Yeah.
And
I don't have the numbers handy, but they've given up leads really over the last year and a half, going back to late last year. You would think that team could close teams out more than anybody in the league, and they really struggle.
Yeah, it's I'm actually going to go ahead and pull it up right now as we're talking, because the Steelers have been one of the best in the league when it comes to second half points. As a matter of fact, I'm pulling that up right now. The Steelers the Steelers are third right now in the NFL in second half scoring at 15 points per game in the second half. I'm going to pull up scoring defense by the quarter, and we'll go opponent second half points. And as this pulls up very slowly, because my internet is going to, be terrible on me, Baltimore is dead last at 15.8 points.
Yeah. So it's not over at halftime,
in the league.
Right.
No, it's not. So the Ravens could be up by 10 points, 13 points at halftime, and it might not matter, because the Steelers are a great second half team and the Ravens have been a bad second half team. And the fact that Russell Wilson has been perfect literally in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Steelers on this one. It really could go either way. This is almost a pick 'em to me. I'm going to say the Steelers win this one. I was only 1 point off on the score last week, by the way. I said 29-27 Steelers. They won 28-27. So I'm going to say the Steelers win this one on a last-second field goal, 34-31. And
very possible.
That's the final score. I do think a lot of points are going to be scored. I don't see this being a blowout either way. I think if it does get into a blowout type game, the Ravens could be the team to pull away, because they have the firepower to do so.
Blowing them out.
No,
I can't. Maybe the Ravens go crazy. Steelers can't cover anybody, and maybe.
Yeah. So that's the way I feel about the game. I this really could go either way, but I'm going to go ahead and lean Steelers to improve to 8-2. I'll probably pick the Ravens when they play later in the season, because I just think they're going to split this series no matter what. These two teams match up against each other very well every single time. It almost doesn't matter what they're doing. Sweeps don't happen that often. I know the Steelers swept the Ravens last year and everything like that, blah, 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 blah. But It just seems like a split is the most, especially if both teams are as healthy as they are, which I know Alex Highsmith's not playing, but still, they're both relatively healthy.
I think
All right.
the Steelers are going to go 1-1 in the next 6 days. I don't know which one they're going to lose and which one they're going to win, but I think they'll do the opposite in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that game, I think, regardless of what happens this Sunday, and we'll obviously get into Cleveland next week, because we'll have to do the show earlier. But that game against Cleveland is going to be tough no matter what, just because of the fact that you just got done playing the Ravens. You're probably going to be really beat up, and now you have to go on the road to play a divisional game against a team that just absolutely hates their big brother.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the game. Steelers-Ravens is always a good time. It's always entertaining. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you again. We'll be back earlier next week because of the Thursday night game next week. But until then, we'll catch you guys on the flippity flip. We'll see you later.